Yeah. Well, I want to be careful. I'm standing on a chair, so I can give you a lay of the land here. But this is what we consider the U.S. press, the White House press report. There are some folks who have jumped on it and have joined us here on this side. I don't know which side is the right and which side is the room here, but it sort of feels like they're out of the way here. And on the other side of the room are our friends from the Russian Federation and other journalists who have been credentialed by the Kremlin. And we'll see both leaders come out here in a few moments. Anderson, we've been hearing all sorts of things all day long. Earlier in the day, we were hearing that these two leaders are going to make joint statements and nothing more, and then hustle on out of here. And then we did hear later on in the day from some of our sources, obviously, were telling us this all this is very touch and go, that we will get questions. And so we're just waiting to find out, as all of us are, exactly what is going to unfold. But I think when the President of the United States tweets that the press in the United States are the enemy of the people, and he attacks members of the press as fake news and so on, I don't think it would be a profile of courage to come in here, give some statements, and having assembled all the members of the press and not take any questions. It seems to me, Anderson, when we dish it out, we ought to be able to take it. And I think the President is going to refer to the press corps of the United States as the enemy of the people. He only owes it to the rest of us here to take a couple of questions that we don't know about what Vladimir Putin has planned, but obviously, Anderson, we've seen over the years, our Matthew Chance, senior international correspondent, is also here. He has asked Vladimir Putin questions at news conferences. So we know the Russian president is not afraid to take questions, and so we hope both of these leaders will do that here in just a moment.
Спасибо большое. Мы можем начать работать, так я понимаю. Уважаемый господин президент, дамы и господа, переговоры с президентом Соединенных Штатов Америки господином Дональдом Трампом прошли в откровенной и деловой атмосфере. Считаю их весьма успешными и полезными. Мы рассмотрели текущее состояние и перспективы российско-американских отношений, ключевые вопросы международной повестки дня. Всем очевидно, что двусторонние отношения переживают сложный период. Однако эти трудности, сложившаяся напряженная атмосфера, не имеют объективных причин. Холодная война давно закончилась, эпоха острого идеологического противостояния двух стран ушла далеко в прошлое, обстановка в мире кардинально изменилась. Сегодня и Россия, и США сталкиваются с совершенно иными вызовами. Это и опасная разбалансировка механизмов международной безопасности, стабильности, региональные кризисы, расползание угроз терроризма и трансграничной преступности, криминалитета, нарастание проблем в мировой экономике, экологические и другие риски. Справиться со всем этим можно только объединяя усилия. Надеюсь, что мы придем к пониманию этого и с американскими партнерами. Сегодняшние переговоры отразили наше совместное с президентом Трампом желание выправить негативную ситуацию в двусторонних отношениях, наметить первые шаги по их оздоровлению, восстановлению приемлемого уровня доверия и возвращению к сотрудничеству прежнего уровня по всем вопросам, представляющим взаимный интерес. Как крупнейшие ядерные державы мы несем особую ответственность за международную безопасность. Считаю важным, и мы говорили об этом, отладить диалог по проблематике стратегического уровня по всем вопросам, представляющим взаимный интерес. Как крупнейшие ядерные державы мы несем особую ответственность за международную безопасность. Считаю важным, и мы говорили об этом, отладить диалог по проблематике стратегической стабильности и нераспространения оружия массового уничтожения. Мы передали американским коллегам записку с рядом конкретных предложений на эту тему. Мы считаем необходимым дальнейшую совместную работу по проработке всего комплекса военно-политического и разоруженческого досье. Тут и продление действия договора о стратегических наступательных вооружениях, опасная ситуация вокруг развития элементов глобальной системы американской противоракетной обороны, выполнение договора о ликвидации ракет средней и меньшей дальности и тематика размещения оружия в космосе. Мы за продолжение сотрудничества в области борьбы с террором и в области обеспечения кибербезопасности. И хочу отметить, что наши специальные службы работают весьма успешно. Самый свежий пример – это тесное оперативное взаимодействие с группой американских экспертов в области безопасности в рамках завершившегося вчера в России чемпионата мира по футболу. Вообще же контакты по линии спецслужб полезно перевести на системную основу. Напомнил президенту Соединенных Штатов о предложении воссоздать рабочую группу по антитеррору. Много говорили и о региональных кризисах. Не везде и не во всем наши позиции совпадают, но и пересекающихся интересов тоже немного. Надо искать точки соприкосновения, теснее взаимодействовать, в том числе и на международных форумах. Говорили, конечно, и о региональных кризисах, в том числе по Сирии. Что касается Сирии, то решение задачи установления в этой стране мира и
task of establishing peace and reconciliation in this country could be the first showcase example of the successful joint work. Russia and the United States apparently can act proactively and take leadership in this issue and organize the interaction to overcome humanitarian crisis and help Syrian refugees to go back to their homes. In order to accomplish this level of successful cooperation in Syria, we have all the required components. Let me remind you that both Russian and American military have acquired a useful experience of coordination of their action, established the operational channels of communication, which permitted to avoid dangerous incidents and unintentional collisions in the air and in the ground. Also, Russian terrorists in the southwest of Syria, the south of Syria, should be brought to the full compliance with the Treaty of 1974 about the separation of forces, of Israel and Syria. This will bring peace to Golan Heights and bring a more peaceful relationship between Israel and also to provide security of the state of Israel. Mr. President paid special attention to the issue during today's negotiations, and I would like to confirm that Russia is interested in this development and this will
направление установления справедливого и прочного мира на основе резолюции 338 Совета Безопасности Организации Объединенных Наций.
In compliance with the respective resolutions of Security Council, for instance, the resolution 338. We're glad that the Korean Peninsula issue is starting to resolve. To a great extent, it was possible thanks to the personal engagement of President Trump, who opted for dialogue instead of confrontation. We also mentioned our concern about the withdrawal of the United States from the JCPOA. Well, the U.S. Our U.S. counterparts are aware of our posture. Let me remind you that thanks to the Iranian nuclear deal, Iran became the most controlled country in the world. It's submitted to the control of IAEA. It effectively ensures the exclusively peaceful nature of the Iranian nuclear program and strengthens the non-proliferation regime. While we discussed the
of conscientious realization, fulfillment of Minsk Accords, the United States could be more determined in insisting on it and, in influencing the Ukrainian government to work in that direction. A special attention was paid to the economy. The interest in cooperation from the business circles is certainly present. The American business delegation was one of the largest at the May St. Petersburg Economic Forum. Over 500 representatives of American business circles. To contribute to development of trade and investments, Mr. Trump and I have agreed to create a high-level group to unite the captains of Russian and American business. The entrepreneurs know it better how to build mutually lucrative cooperation. Let them think what can be done and let them come up with their own proposals. President Trump again touched upon the subject of the so-called Russian interference in the electoral campaign of the United States. I had to repeat what I've said before, including at personal meetings with Mr. Trump. The Russian government has never interfered, is not going to interfere in the American domestic affairs, including the electoral process. If any such evidence is provided, we're ready to examine it. For example, as part of the work group for cybersecurity, which we discussed with Mr. Trump at previous meetings. And obviously, it's high time to defreeze Russian-American connections in public organizations and cultural and humanitarian areas. You know, very recently we were visited by a delegation of American congressmen, and it's been perceived as nearly a historic event. Well, in fact, it must be a routine routine visit, routine action. So I've asked Mr. President to think not only about practical matters, but the philosophy of building relations for a long long-term perspective. It would be useful to involve the experience of experts who know history well and specifics of Russian-American interaction. The idea is to create an expert union from influential and Russian and American political scientists, ex-diplomats and military people who would start to find common grounds and thinking about how we can bring our cooperation into a stable and positive condition. On the whole, we are content with the results of our meeting. Previously, we only briefly met at international fora. We had a good talk with Mr. Trump, and hopefully we now understand each other better. I am thankful for that to Mr. Trump, to Donald. Of course, many problems remain, and we failed to clear all obstacles. It was impossible to do it at the first meeting, but I think we made an important first step in that direction. To conclude, I would like to mention that creating a working atmosphere is, to a great extent, the merit of our Finnish host. We're very grateful to the Finnish government, Finnish people and residents of Helsinki for what they have done. I know we've caused a lot of inconvenience to them and apologize for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I have just concluded a meeting with President Putin on a wide range of critical issues for both of our countries. We had direct, open, deeply productive dialogue. Went very well. Before I begin, I want to thank President Niinisto of Finland for graciously hosting today's summit. President Putin and I were saying how lovely it was and what a great job they did. I also want to congratulate Russia and President Putin for having done such an excellent job in hosting the World Cup. It was really one of the best ever, and your team also did very well. It was a great job. I'm here today to continue the proud tradition of bold American diplomacy. From the earliest days of our republic, American leaders have understood that diplomacy and engagement is preferable to conflict and hostility. A productive dialogue is not only good for the United States and good for Russia, but it is good for the world. The disagreements between our two countries are well known, and President Putin and I discussed them at length today. But if we're going to solve many of the problems facing our world, then we're going to have to find ways to cooperate in pursuit of shared interests. Too often in both recent past and long ago, we have seen the consequences when diplomacy is left on the table. We have also seen the benefits of cooperation. In the last century, our nations fought alongside one another in the Second World War. Even during the tensions of the Cold War, when the world looked much different than it does today, the United States and Russia were able to maintain a strong dialogue. But our relationship has never been worse than it is now. However, that changed as of about 4 hours ago. I really believe that. Nothing would be easier politically than to refuse to meet, to refuse to engage, but that would not accomplish anything. As president, I cannot make decisions on foreign policy in a futile effort to appease partisan critics or the media or Democrats who want to do nothing but resist and obstruct. Constructive dialogue between the United States and Russia affords the opportunity to open new pathways toward peace and stability in our world. I would rather take a political risk in pursuit of peace than to risk peace in pursuit of politics. As president, I will always put what is best for America and what is best for the American people. During today's meeting, I addressed directly with President Putin the issue of Russian interference in our elections. I felt this was a message best delivered in person spent a great deal of time talking about it, and President Putin may very well want to address it, and very strongly, because he feels very strongly about it, and he has an interesting idea. We also discussed one of the most critical challenges facing humanity, nuclear proliferation. I provided an update on my meeting last month with Chairman Kim. End that problem, going to work with us, and I appreciate that commitment. The President and I also discussed the scourge of radical Islamic terrorism. Both Russia and the United States have suffered horrific terrorist attacks, and we have agreed to maintain open communication between our security agencies to protect our citizens from this global menace. Last year, we told Russia about a planned attack in St. Petersburg, and they were able to stop it cold. They found them, they stopped them, there was no doubt about it. I appreciated President Putin's phone call afterwards to thank me. I also emphasized the importance of placing pressure on Iran to halt its nuclear ambitions and to stop its campaign of violence throughout the area, throughout the Middle East. As we discussed at length, the crisis in Syria is a complex one. Cooperation between our two countries has the potential to save hundreds of thousands of lives. I also made clear that the United States will not allow Iran to benefit from our successful campaign against ISIS. We have just about eradicated ISIS in the area. We also agreed that representatives from our national security councils will meet to follow up on all of the issues we addressed today and to continue the progress we have started right here in Helsinki. Today's meeting is only the beginning of a longer process, but we have taken the first steps toward a brighter future, and one with a strong dialogue and a lot of thought. Our expectations are grounded in realism, but our hopes are grounded in America's desire for friendship, cooperation, and peace. And I think I can speak on behalf of Russia when I say that also. President Putin, I want to thank you again for joining me for these important discussions and for advancing open dialogue between Russia and the United States. Our meeting carries on a long tradition of diplomacy between Russia, the United States, for the greater good of all. And this was a very constructive day. This was a very constructive few hours that we spent together. It's in the interest of both of our countries to continue our conversation, and we have agreed to do so. I'm sure we'll be meeting again in the future, often, and hopefully we will solve every one of the problems that we discussed today. So, again, President Putin, thank you very much.
Господа президенты, сейчас журналисты смогут задать по 2 вопроса, российские и американские. Мы начинаем с российских журналистов с кремлевского пула. Пожалуйста, прошу вас, представляйтесь.
The American Russian
Здравствуйте,
side.
меня зовут
We're
Алексей
starting
Мешков.
with
Я
the Kremlin pool.
информационное агентство
Introduce yourself. My name is Alexei Mishkov. I represent the Interfax Information Agency. My question is to Mr. Trump. During your recent European tour, you said that implementation of the pipeline project, Northern Stream, makes Europe hostage to Russia, and you suggested that Europe gets rid of that dependence by delivering American liquefied gas. But this cold winter showed the viability of the existing system of energy supply in Europe, while the United States would have to buy extra volumes of liquefied gas. So the implementation of your idea, is it more political and rather economic? And won't it cause a situation when the energy supply in Europe will create a hole to which the consumer countries will get, first of all. And the second question, if you permit me. Before meeting President Putin, you called him your rival, but left a hope that you will probably make that relationship friendly one. Did you manage? Thank you.
I called him a competitor, and a good competitor he is. And I think the word competitor is it's a compliment. I think that we will be competing when you talk about the pipeline. I'm not sure necessarily that it's in the best interests of Germany or not, but that was a decision that they made. We'll be competing. As you know, the United States is now, or soon will be, but I think it actually is right now the largest in the oil and gas world. So we're going to be selling LNG, and we'll have to be competing with the pipeline. And I think we'll compete successfully, although there is a little advantage locationally. So I just wish them luck. I mean, I did. I discussed with Angela Merkel in pretty strong tones. But I also know where they're all coming from. And they have a very close source. So we'll see how that all works out. But we have lots of sources now, and the United States is much different than it was a number of years ago when we weren't able to extract what we can extract today. So today we're number one in the world at that, and I think we'll be out there competing very strongly. Thank you very much.
Я позволю себе добавить два слова.
Add a couple of words.
Мы говорили.
We spoke with Mr. President on that subject. Also, we know Mr. President's position, but I believe that we, as the largest oil and gas power, the United States are also that country, could work constructively in regulating international markets, because we're not interested in drastic fall of prices beyond a threshold, because that will make our producers suffer, including the United States, with their shale gas and oil. Beyond certain limits, the profitability of production disappears, but we are neither interested in extremely high prices, but that will kill machine building and other branches of economy. We have something to discuss here and have a field for cooperation. That's one thing. The second thing, regarding Northern Stream 2, Mr. President voiced his preoccupation about possible disappearance of transit through Ukraine, and I assured Mr. President that Russia is ready to preserve that transit. Moreover, we are ready to extend the transit contract, which expires next year, if the dispute is settled in the Stockholm Arbitration Court.
The first question from a U.S. journalist goes to Jeff Mason from Reuters.
Thank you. Mr. President, you tweeted this morning that it's U.S. foolishness, stupidity, and the Mueller probe that is responsible for the decline in U.S. relations with Russia. Do you hold Russia at all accountable for anything in particular? And if so, what would you consider them that they are responsible for?
Yes, I do. I hold both countries responsible. I think that the United States has been foolish. I think we've all been foolish. We should have had this dialogue a long time ago, a long time, frankly, before I got to office. And I think we're all to blame. I think that the United States now has stepped forward along with Russia, and we're getting together, and we have a chance to do some great things, whether it's nuclear proliferation in terms of stopping. We have to do it. Ultimately, that's probably the most important thing that we can be working on. But I do feel that we have both made some mistakes. I think that the probe is a disaster for our country. I think it's kept us apart. It's kept us separated. There was no collusion at all. Everybody knows it. People are being brought out to the fore. So far that I know, virtually none of it related to the campaign. And they're going to have to try really hard to find somebody that did relate to the campaign. That was a clean campaign. I beat Hillary Clinton easily. And frankly, we beat her. And I'm not even saying from the standpoint, we won that race And it's a shame that there can even be a little bit of a cloud over it. People know that, people understand it, but the main thing, and we discussed this also, is zero collusion. And it has had a negative impact upon the relationship of the two largest nuclear powers in the world. We have 90% of nuclear power between the two countries. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous what's going on with the probe.
For President Putin, if I could follow up as well, why should Americans and why should President Trump believe your statement that Russia did not intervene in the 2016 election, given the evidence that U.S. intelligence agencies have provided? And will you consider extraditing the 12 Russian officials that were indicted last week by a U.S. grand jury?
Well, I'm going to let the president answer the second part of that question. But as you know, the whole concept of that came up perhaps a little bit before, but it came out as a reason why the Democrats lost an election, which frankly, they should have been able to win because the Electoral College is much more advantageous for Democrats, as you know, than it is to Republicans. We won the Electoral College by a lot, 306 to 223, I believe. And that was a well-fought battle. We did a great job. And frankly, I'm going to let the president speak to the second part of your question. But just to say it one time again, and I say it all the time, there was no collusion. I didn't know the president. There was nobody to collude with. There was no collusion with the campaign. And every time you hear all of these, 12 and 14, it's stuff that has nothing to do. And frankly, they admit these are not people involved in the campaign. But to the average reader out there, they're saying, well, maybe that does. It doesn't. And even the people involved, some perhaps told misstories, although in one case the FBI said there was no lie. There was no lie. Somebody else said there was. We ran a brilliant campaign, and that's why I'm president. Thank you.
Regarding who you should believe and whether you can believe anyone at all, you can't believe anyone. But why do you think that President Trump trusts me? I trust him completely. He is defending the U.S. interests. I defend the Russian interests. We have overlapping interests and we're looking for common grounds. We have things in which we diverge so far, and we're looking for options to reconcile those divergences, how to make our work constructive. We must base ourselves not on immediate political interests, internal political forces of our countries, but on facts. Give me at least one fact which would tell about a certain collusion during the election campaign in the United States. It's completely absurd. We learned it from the president. And the fact that in the Russian society during the American electoral campaign, a certain opinion was formed about specific candidates. It's quite normal. What's so strange about it? President Trump, as a candidate, spoke about the necessity to U.S.-Russian relations. But that's natural, naturally created a sympathy towards that candidate in the Russian society. And various people expressed that sympathy in various ways. Isn't it natural to sympathize with somebody who wants to build a relation with our country? It's normal. We heard accusations about Concord. As far as I know, that firm hired American defenders, American lawyers, and all those accusations collapse in American courts. That's the things we should prop ourselves on, not rumors. And the other thing concerning those 12 alleged employees of our secret services, I haven't studied that question properly. I still have to find out. But right now, what I can say, we discussed that in general. The first thing that comes to my mind, we have an acting agreement between the United States and Russian Federation. dated 1999, the agreement on cooperation in criminal cases. That agreement works and works efficiently. We have up to 150 inquiries per year, and this the appropriate number of criminal cases that we open. We had an extradition last year when an American citizen was extradited and judged in a Russian court. This agreement provides for appropriate procedures. We can propose that all relevant commission of yours, headed by your prosecutor, Mr. Mueller, will, as part of that agreement, sends an official request to us to conduct the interrogation of those people who are supposed to be guilty in various offenses. Our prosecution services and investigative bodies can conduct that interrogation and forward the relevant materials to the United States. Moreover, we can make one more step in the same direction. We can allow official representatives of the United States, including their head, Mr. Miller, allow them to be present at those interrogations. But in that case, we'll certainly talk about making that action mutual. We would, in that case, expect the American party to interrogate those officials, including officers of special intelligence services, which we suspect of conducting criminal activities in the Russian Federation, in the presence of our investigators. What do I mean? I mean the famous case of Hermitage Capital. According to our investigation, a group of individuals, business partners of Mr. Brown, illegally earned over $1.5 billion in the Russian Federation without paying taxes either in Russia or the United States. But they transferred that money to the United States. $400 million were forwarded directly to the electoral campaign of Mrs. Clinton. These are official data. They probably made that legally, but they earned their money illegally. So we have reasons to suppose that certain officers, intelligence officers of the United States illegally assisted in those transactions. And that's just one example where we can speak about broadening our cooperation. Please suggest various options, various proposals. They are made possible by that agreement.
You want President Trump to win the election, and did you direct any of your officials to help him do that?
I wanted him to win because he spoke about normalization of Russo-American relations. To continue, we can have 3 more questions from the Russian pool. Russia Today, you're welcome. Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Ilya Petrenko. As Dmitry said, I represent RT Channel.
Mr. President, would you please go into the details of possibly any specific arrangements for the U.S. to work together with Russia in Syria, if any of these kind of arrangements were made today or discussed?
And if you permit me, Vladimir Vladimirovich, a question in Russian. As far as today, a few times we've touched upon the football subject. I asked the question in the football language. Mr. Pompeo slightly earlier said that when it was a matter of interaction in Syria, the ball is on the Russian side. Vladimir Vladimirovich, is that really so? And if that's so, how do you use that ball possession? Thank you.
Well, I guess I'll answer the first part of the question. We've worked with Israel long and hard for many years, many decades. I think we've never has any country been closer than we are. President Putin also is helping Israel. And we both spoke with Bibi Netanyahu, and they would like to do certain things with respect to Syria, having to do with the safety of Israel. So in that respect, we absolutely would like to work in order to help Israel, and Israel will be working with us. So both countries would work jointly. And I think that when you look at all of the progress that's been made in certain sections with the eradication of ISIS, we're about 98%, 99% there, and other things that have taken place that we've done, and that, frankly, Russia has helped us with in certain respects. But I think that working with Israel is a great thing, and creating safety for Israel is something that both President Putin and I would like to see very much. One little thing I might add to that is the helping of people. Helping of people, because you have such horrible, if you see, and I've seen reports and I've seen pictures, I've seen just about everything. And if we can do something to help the people of Syria get back into some form of shelter and on a humanitarian basis, and that's what the word was, really, a humanitarian basis. I think that both of us would be very interested in doing that, and we will do that. Okay? Thank you very much.
Excuse me, but for now, no specific agreements, for instance, between the militaries?
Well, our militaries do get along. In fact, our militaries actually have gotten along probably better than our political leaders for years, but our militaries do get along very well, and they do coordinate in Syria and other places. Okay? Thank you.
Мы говорили, я уже упоминал об этом.
And I mentioned that about cooperation in the humanitarian fields. I just yesterday discussed that item with the President of France, Mr. Macron, and we agreed that ourselves and the European countries are going to activate that work. We, on our part, are prepared to provide transport airplanes to carry those humanitarian cargo. We spoke about that with Mr. Trump. There's a field to develop. But what is important, there's a huge number of refugees concentrated in the neighboring states, Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan. If we provide assistance to people to help them return home, the migration pressure on the European Union countries, other countries, will diminish significantly. I think that's important from all points of view, humanitarian and in terms of solving the refugee problem. But as regards, well, on the whole, I agree with President. Our militaries cooperate successfully. I hope they will carry on agreeing as previously. We'll carry on working in the Astana format with Turkey and Iran. I'll inform Donald about that. And we are ready to combine those efforts with the efforts of the small group, so-called small group of states, to have the process acquire a broader nature and to have the maximum chance for a final success. Yes, as regards the ball on our part of the field, in Syria, Mr. President has spoken that we have successfully just finished the World Cup. So as far as the ball is concerned, I am passing the ball on to Mr. President. Now it's on his side. Even more as the United States will host the 2026 World Cup.
That's right. Thank you very much. We do host it, and we hope we do as good a job. That's very nice. That will go to my son, Barron. We have no question. In fact, Melania, here you go. Okay.
The final question from the United States will go to Jonathan Lemire from the AP.
Thank you. Question for each president. President Trump, yes. You first. Just now, President Putin denied having anything to do with the election interference in 2016. Every U.S. intelligence agency has concluded that Russia did. My first question for you, sir, is who do you believe? My second question is, would you now with the whole world watching, tell President Putin, would you denounce what happened in 2016, and would you warn him to never do it again?
So let me just say that we have two thoughts. You have groups that are wondering why the FBI never took the server. Why haven't they taken the server? Why was the FBI told to leave the office of the Democratic National Committee? I've been wondering that. I've been asking that for months and months, and I've been tweeting it out and calling it out on social media. Where is the server? I want to know, where is the server, and what is the server saying? With that being said, all I can do is ask the question. My people came to me, Dan Coates came to me, and some others. They said they think it's Russia. I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this. I don't see any reason why it would be, but I really do want to see the server. But I have confidence in both parties. I really believe that this will probably go on for a while, but I don't think it can go on without finding out what happened to the server. What happened to the servers of the Pakistani gentlemen that worked on the DNC? Where are those servers? They're missing. Where are they? What happened to Hillary Clinton's emails? 33,000 emails gone, just gone. I think in Russia they wouldn't be gone so easily. I think it's a disgrace that we can't get Hillary Clinton's 33,000 emails. So I have great confidence in my intelligence people, but I will tell you that President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial today. And what he did is an incredible offer. He offered to have the people working on the case come and work with their investigators with respect to the 12 people. I think that's an incredible offer. Okay? Thank you.
Позвольте мне добавить.
Let me add a few words.
Я ведь тоже работал в России.
I also worked in intelligence,
И знаю, как
and I know
соответствующие досье.
how the appropriate files are compiled. Just a minute, please.
Это первое.
That's one thing.
Второе.
The second,
Я считаю Россию
I think
демократическим государством.
Russia is a democratic
Надеюсь, вы не
country. I
отказываете в
hope
этом
you
и
won't
своей стране,
deny
Соединенным Штатам
that to your own country, the United
Соединенные
States.
Штаты демократическое
The United
государство.
States, is it a democratic state,
А если это так,
democratic country? If that's so,
окончательный вывод
the final conclusion
в споре подобного
in a dispute like that
только суд.
can be made only by a court, not by intelligence services.
Компания, которую я
The company I managed, Concord, and one of our restaurateurs, are also facing similar accusations, but they don't represent Russia. They don't represent the Russian state. So what? I've brought some examples already. You have many people, including with those multi-billion fortunes, Mr. Soros, for example, who interferes everywhere. But is that the position of the American government? That's a private individual. It's the same here. There is an investigation, there is a case in an American court. The final decision is only for the court. Let them make it. That concerns only individuals, specific individuals, not the government, not the state. But the latest accusation, the alleged cooperation of our intelligence officers, there is an agreement, an international agreement, bilateral agreement. Let your commission send a query, we'll act on it and send you a reply. We can enlarge that cooperation, but only on a mutual basis. In that case, we'll be also expecting access provided by the American party for us to those individuals we think are intelligence agents. Let's discuss it properly. Let's not use the American-Russian relations as a currency, as a trump card in the political fight.
For President Putin, thank you. Two questions for you, sir. Can you tell me what President Trump may have indicated to you about officially recognizing Crimea as part of Russia? And then secondly, sir, does the Russian government have any compromising material on President Trump or his family?
Значит,
Well,
Президента Трампа
President Trump's position on Crimea is known. He adheres to it. He says that it was illegal, the annexation of the Crimea to the Russian Federation. We have a different point of view. We think we conducted the referendum in strict accordance with the international law and United Nations Charter. Yeah, that question is closed for us, for Russians. As regarding the compromising materials, I've heard that we've allegedly been collecting those materials on Mr. Trump when he was coming to Moscow. Dear colleagues, when Mr. Trump was coming to Moscow, I didn't even know he was there. I treat Mr. Trump with respect as the head of the American state, but when he came over as a businessman, I didn't even know he was in Moscow. The St. Petersburg Economic Forum in St. Petersburg was attended by over 500 American businessmen of very highest rank. I don't even know their names, I won't remember the names of most of them. Do you think we're going to collect evidence on all of them? Well, you can't even imagine a great nonsense. Oh, please throw throw that rubbish out of your head.
And I have to say, if they had it, it would have been out long ago. And if anybody watched Peter Strzok testify over the last couple of days, and I was in Brussels watching it, it was a disgrace to the FBI, it was a disgrace to our country, and you would say that was a total witch hunt. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
And with that, the Trump-Putin summit in Helsinki has concluded. Not too many questions taken by both of the presidents there, but the overall feeling of what went on in the summit expressed by Donald Trump. You may remember us reporting that before it took place, Donald Trump had tweeted that relations between the United States and Russia were at their worst level ever. Well, he came in to that news conference and repeated that, but said that changed 4 hours ago. Also referred to the talks as being direct, open, deeply productive talks. On his part, President Putin of Russia said, again, similar kind of sentiments, that there were many problems remaining between them, but this was the first step in building a good working atmosphere. You could again tell by the body language between the two men that must have been many disagreements, probably more disagreements than agreements, and we'll be examining those during the course of the afternoon. In particular, in actual fact, that last question that was put to President Putin, and a very direct answer from Vladimir Putin on the issue of Crimea. He said he understands the Americans' position on the annexation of Crimea, that it was in effect illegal. But President Putin said he felt that they carried out a referendum there to allow it to join the Russian Federation in accordance with UN rules, and there would be no compromise, he said, on Crimea. The other big issue arising was, of course, that hanging over this entire summit, the issue of meddling in American politics, the issue of meddling in the election of 2016. Now, President Trump said on that that Vladimir Putin has, quote unquote, an interesting idea about who's behind that interference. Now, he didn't expound on that point. It would have been interesting, perhaps, if one of the journalists had drilled down a bit more on that. But Mr. Trump has stayed with, again, what he tweeted before this summit. I hold both countries, i.e. the United States and Russia, responsible for poor relations. We are all to blame. And by that he means the previous Democrat administration when it comes to the American side.